So our session today is actually about hiring and promoting tomorrow's leaders. I just wanted to verify that, is everyone microphones on? Everyone who needs to be? Beautiful. So we're going to be talking about hiring and promoting tomorrow's leaders. Now, I know we've covered a little bit of ground already. I want to be wary that some people haven't heard or maybe are just joining us later, and some people have. So I won't try to labor certain points and try to find something unique for everybody. So in no particular order, I want to welcome our panelists. The first is, and apologize and correct me if I mispronounced your name, okay? Yusuf Shadid, who is working in HR, has worked for Ernst & Young, is currently working for Ernst & Young, worked for Deloitte and Commonwealth Bank. So pretty much very major, prestigious organizations. And has recently started Gradship, which is an organization which helps graduates with their employability skills. He has a business management degree from Swinburne University, taking advantage of exchange opportunities also in Netherlands and Mexico, and become a study abroad ambassador. And Yusuf was also named emerging leader upon graduation. Secondly, and again, correct me if I've mispronounced it, Manfred Mletsen from Estonia.
Yeah, he's correct, actually.
Great, fantastic. Now, interestingly, Manfred is still completing his accounting degree at Charles Darwin University and has been appointed studying Northern Territory student ambassador for 3 years, and has also worked for an undergraduate officer with CSUM. Now, even before graduating, Manfred has actually started his own accountancy firm, consultancy firm. So this is sort of that demonstration, especially in a place like Australia. We don't always care about the degree as much as we appreciate the other skills and initiatives. So definitely demonstrating leadership. And finally, and again, this is going to be the toughest one for me to pronounce, Arjun Matalakar with Navitas. Is that correct?
Yes, that's actually correct.
Thank
you. Hi, everyone on and off screen.
Okay. And Arjun was also a former National Public Relations Officer with CSIR and is now the Territories Operation Manager for Navitas Professional. And Navitas helps people develop careers for professional development and career and delivers training across Australia. Now, Arjun is the Territories Operations Manager in Canberra. He's also a board member of Montessori School in Canberra. And before that was the Business Development Manager for Viz Australia, an immigration law firm in Canberra. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right. And just a little bit about me, in case you might have seen me on other student job seminars where I've delivered and with Dinka. I have a little bit, I was born in Hong Kong, but I'm not technically classified as an international student because I went to school in Australia, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is I was a very lazy student. When I studied, even a few years before, we didn't pay for our degrees. It was free for locals. And now it's not the case now. But what it brought on was a bit of a laziness. I didn't turn up to half my classes. I went golfing and fishing. And I didn't take it very seriously until I graduated. And then all the stress happened. But on the other hand, I still had that cultural influence from my parents, from maybe not being as social as I could have been during certain times, and not develop some of those skills that we're going to be talking about today. I've also started a online training platform called Job Search and Professional Skills Academy. And that helps people find jobs and learn to develop those skills. And I'm going to add other skills such as public speaking and such as well. Now, we've got a lot of excited and potentially anxious international students listening, not just now, but potentially to the replay of this session. So I'm speaking to 3 people who have both experience from being international students and the uncertainty of what doors will be open for you after you graduate, and not just have overcome it, but help other people overcome it. So I think one thing our audience wants to hear a little bit about is the journey that you went on, especially the lessons and what you did, why you did certain things. And, to relate to them with all the emotions and reactions that you've had to go through when you started your own searches. Firstly, what I would like to do is I like to put this out to any of you who wish to start. What experience, tell us a little bit about your situation, the motion and the successful and unsuccessful actions when you guys started looking for a job. I'll take volunteers, whoever wants to start.
Sure, I can start since...
Yusuf?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Declan, for that. So it's a very interesting question because as a graduate and as a student, be it local or international, you sort of go through your degree and you finish it. And only towards your final year, in most cases, you actually start looking for jobs. And obviously that's the wrong approach. And we now know it's the wrong approach because employability starts a lot earlier and jobs start earlier. And I was no exception. I did exactly that. I was involved, I volunteered, but in terms of actually thinking what sort of jobs I wanted, only towards my final year that I started looking, and being that, panic student that, missing on all the graduate deadlines. And I think my experience has been, have that generic resume, put everything you've ever done and hope for the best. And I think that's an approach that's done by many students with the, with the reviews I'm doing with international students. So I did that, applied for probably 100 or 120, I lost count. And, just like many students would know, you either never hear back or you get that generic email after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. So it is frustrating. And that was my experience. And I was unsuccessful initially because of the approach. And obviously, now I know it's not the right approach, but back then I didn't understand the full picture. So just made, I guess, not only the resume, my experience more relevant to what I'm trying to do. So went to the careers office back at university, saw some industry leaders and mentors, people I knew in the industry, asked them about their insights. And that's when I started to sort of target my applications as opposed to sort of just applying everyone, just wanting a job. I actually was more selective, so focused on quality as opposed to quantity. And luckily, throughout the process, I was able to secure a graduate role at Deloitte. So that's been my experience. And that's the experience that most students I'm seeing still are following. Basically, just put everything in one resume, apply for anywhere, any place that accepts me, I'll get a job there. And obviously that's not the right approach because it's just gonna end with more frustration. So yeah, that's been my, I guess, experience in the final year. Obviously there's a bigger piece of, actually doing internship and work experience early on. I didn't have any of that. So basically just, the earlier you start, the better. That would be my advice there in this.
No, I think definitely it's true. I was being lazy and a bad student. I was so late, I missed deadlines for applying all the time.
I missed a lot of deadlines, absolutely, yeah.
So definitely it's pointless to miss a deadline. But I actually find that practice of applying was quite useful. And I guess I have this philosophy, even when I teach people how to apply for jobs, is you won't master a skill on something at least until the third time. So just go through those first 2 times and expect to fail, or don't expect to fail, but anticipate you'll fail, but allow yourself those first 2 times as not being that serious about it. You're not going to kill yourself if you don't get it. So who would be next? Arjun, I see you looking intently at the screen there.
Oh, okay, of course. Well, first, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners, of the lands we are residing in, and especially Ngunnawal people, whose land I'm residing here in Canberra. I also want to pay respect to the elders of the community, past, present, and emerging. Before I start, I also want to put in a bit of a disclaimer stating that my views are personal here, and some of these things which I say might not necessarily reflect the views of the organization I work with. So coming to my story in Australia, I think I was a bit lucky, to be honest, and partly because I met the right people and they guided me from the beginning. So I think my job hunt started about a year before I graduated, which worked well for me. And first, I started looking for jobs which was relatable to what I was studying. So I did my master's in management. So I wanted to look for, or rather, I started looking for a job that could showcase my skills of what I studied and what I wanted to pursue as a career. So when I got in as a PR coordinator, public relations coordinator in an immigration lawyer firm. I took that up. That wasn't necessarily, the direction I wanted to go in as a career, but then a desk job is a big thing for any international students. And this is something which I want to encourage every international student to try to, rather than going for hospitality or retail, always try to get a desk job. And if you can't, that's absolutely fine. And there is definitely value in doing retail jobs as well as, hospitality. And you get some excellent soft skills, which otherwise you would never have got. And I think that desk job sort of paved way for me. Upon graduation, they offered me a full-time job there itself as a business development manager. And then later on, when I got the opportunity to join Navitas, I took that on. So for me, it was more organic because I planned from the beginning. And that is what I encourage everyone to do, whether you are international student or domestic student. As Yusuf said, this is not something which only international students face. It's this problem is being faced by any student, and irrespective of where from or where they're studying. You go to Europe, you go to America, the issue is still the same. It's about that gap between the skill set employers are looking for and the skill set students bring in. So how you can reduce that gap, and how you can add value to yourself to put in that place where, you are above others. That's what you need to do.
No, fantastic. And Manfred, about your story, how about you tell us your one?
So, like Arjun said, his views as his personal, but look, it's same with me. And I think I'm going towards against what Arjun said, because I'm actually a firm believer that a lot of people should work in hospitality at least 3 months so they can understand how mean people are and they can put up whatever is coming at them. Because look, I came to Australia in 2014 and I started studying in 2016, and the only job here, particularly in Darwin, Northern Territory, because it's such a tourism place, the only job at that time I could find was in hospitality. Bear in mind, never ever had I worked in hospitality. My background was agriculture, logistics. I had worked in warehouses, all that sort of stuff. I had started studying accounting back at home, but I left it there. So when I came here, it was just, I had to start from the beginning. But I think I set myself that idea, as Arjun said, that desk job. Even with hospitality, I started with the idea, all right, I'm gonna run drinks out. I'm learning the basics, because as a leader or a manager, you need to know the basics as well. Because as a manager, I would never ever ask anyone to do something that I know that I can't do either, because it's just needed. Months later, I was already in a management position. I became a supervisor. Later on, I became an assistant manager to the cafe that I was working. But all those skills that I learned in the hospitality particular, I firmly believe that have come in help for me, particularly in my jobs, because like Arjun was the public relations officer for CISA. Later on, I was appointed at that next to the vet and TAFE officer as the undergraduate officer. But all those skills that I learned while working in hospitality, doing volunteering job for CISA, doing volunteer jobs for multiple organizations, those skills later on rolled me into the position where I was actually working in the international education sector as the student support officer and client liaison. But it built me, the work in hospitality, how to put it, it built me up to the moments that came to the moment where I was like, okay, I can actually put up with this, because the amount of sorry for my language at some point, but the amount of shit that I had to put up with in hospitality,
we'll bleep that out in the editing.
Yeah, my skin went so thick, and I think it's actually important. And working in hospitality gave me a lot of soft skills to this day, which I think a lot of students are lacking, because yes, they're doing their master's degree, they have gotten their master's degree, bachelor's degree, but they don't have even a basic understanding how to respond to an email, how to actually pick up a phone call, because you learn that obviously. But I think over time it comes. But I think it was in the past session as well where they said, don't be scared to go and put yourself out there, particularly volunteering or signing up for a desk job. Yes, we might have our degrees from back home, which are very higher, but over here, unfortunately, we do have to start at some point again. But
I think it's a good point because there's that communication aspect, I think.
exactly.
I actually see both because I did a lot of hospitality when I was a student. And it was not because I wanted a better job. I just wanted some money, right?
Yeah,
I wanted
exactly.
to play more golf. I wanted to support my car, which is not cheap, not cheap in Australia, and go do more fishing. And I just did it for the money. And you're right, there is a lot of exposure to people and the different degrees of people, and you learn to be polite and professional. I also sort of see because I remember interviewing for a large one of those big four consulting firms when I graduated, and I was trying to sell whatever experience I had, which was hospitality. And the guy I could tell was sort of losing interest. And sort of his statement was, okay, well, hospitality is sort of a well understood industry. And remember, I was targeting something quite specific. It wasn't customer service, etc. It was actually management consulting. So it was specifically understanding business, etc. So I do appreciate both actually. And I think working in office is quite different from working in hospitality. There's a lot more subtle messages in communication. And I think that needs to be learned as well. No, this is fantastic. And I want to get back to you, Yusuf, because you're still studying and you started an accounting company, which reminds me of a friend of mine who was not
sorry, that Yusuf started
Manfred.
Manfred, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Manfred.
I started the accounting firm with my mate.
I'm terrible. Just remember, I'm terrible with faces and names sometimes. I just sort of register. So you started an accounting firm without actually graduating yet. And this is reminding me of a friend of mine who actually wrote a book on tax, became a #1 bestseller in the bookstore, not just like an Amazon one. But he wasn't he wasn't qualified, didn't have a degree in tax or anything. So tell us about what made you think that. And I guess I want you to sort of show that, why did you think that would be successful here? And if you compare that to, say, another country, what do you see there?
Yeah. So the idea of starting my own company with my friend was the fact that my good friend Ali had lost his job recently. And I knew my termination was coming up as well due to the COVID. And he said, look, mate, if we can start a company at this stage and we can run through the COVID, I think we can go through everything. So big ups for Ali for calling me up on that day. But the idea is, look, if you hire the right people and who are qualified enough, not enough, but qualified to do the job, you can still run a company. There are many successful business owners and multi-million businesses who are either college dropouts or university dropouts, but they just saw the opportunity to grab onto it and carry on from there. Because look, as a how to put it, my business partner Ali says every father has a father. So yes, we're learning still, but at the same time, we knew that we need someone there to guide us as a mentor as well. But going forward, now we're mentoring other students at the same time who work for us and who do their internships with us. But that's the thing, even if we get stuck, obviously we'll go and ask because we don't want to do anything wrong. But at the same time, setting up a business and all that sort of stuff, it is very, how to put it, expensive, and it's time consuming, whether you have to get your...
But I think the point also is sort of a little bit more inspirational because it's not something many people would do.
Yeah.
And I actually want to go on now to actually hiring, because you obviously expose yourself to that market, hiring interns as well. And I don't know, Yusuf, you've been in HR, and with Gradship, you're helping graduates directly. So I want to put this out there from your broader experience view, all three of you, but I might start with you, Yusuf, is We have a typical international student who was doing typical international student things on their degree, studying hard, maybe having a bit of a part-time job, and then they start applying. Now, you might want to compare it to your experience or compare it to the resumes that you've seen come in. What do you advise people change from all the resumes that you've seen and from your own experience? What do you say, okay, this is the typical resume. This is what they need to do more of. This is not what I see normally in international students, and therefore I would never even consider passing that on to an employer or passing on to my boss and suggesting, because it would embarrass you.
That's a really good question, actually. And I'm guilty of that myself when I was a graduate, you know. I think I always say the triple R's for a resume. So your resume has to be relevant, reviewed, and what was the third R? Yeah, so relevant, reviewed, and basically readable, so you can read it, right? So relevant, I think I spoke a bit about it. As a graduate, less than 5 years experience, there's no reason ever for your resume to be more than 2 pages. I would advise 1, but I get that some students are fairly involved volunteering leadership, 2 pages max. There is no reason ever, less than 5 years, to have more than 2. That's the first thing. So it has to be relevant to the job. If it's relevant to the job, it'll be 2 pages. Relevant also in the verbs and what sort of transferable skills and responsibilities you put on. But more importantly, and you'd be surprised, it has to be reviewed. Like literally just read over it with fresh eyes or have someone else read over it. So I'm talking about grammar mistakes. I'm talking about misalignments. I'm talking about spelling mistakes, different colors, different fonts, right? So it's not really reviewed. And this brings to the last point, it has to be readable. So if I see a resume of 2 pages of full text, no white space whatsoever, maybe 8 headings per page, very confusing to read, and there is that one nice page, clearly articulated education, study, volunteering, you know, name and contact information. It's clear which one I'm going to read, right? So I think make it, you know, readable, relevant, and reviewed. That would be my best tip for the resumes. But back to your point about sort of, you know, what you mentioned earlier about hospitality skills and, you know, communication. I agree. Working in office is very different to working in hospitality, but there are transferable skills that you can take. And, you know, Manfred already touched on that sort of resilience. You just know what to expect and you can communicate accordingly. You know, taking responsibility, being proactive. All of those skills, if you can frame them in the resume using that language, then yes, you can add that. What I'm seeing a lot of is someone putting their hospitality job, which you can, if it's relevant, absolutely. And I think you should, if you don't have experience, but then they would only go on the tasks that are not relevant, right? So like clearing rubbish. Yes, you've done that task, but what has that done, right, to you? Have you reviewed procedures? Have you done end-to-end like reconciliation of the cash register? Have you served customers and, you know, complaint manager? What are the transferable skills that if I read this, I'm like, okay, at least he's employable, he's got those skills. So I think this is the key aspect that I'm seeing a lot of international students miss. Either they don't include any of their previous roles in retail hospitality and they think they're not relevant, which is a mistake, or they include too many and they're just using the wrong language. So I would say focus on these ones for resume. That would be, I guess, my top tips for, you know, a good resume.
Okay, fantastic. And Arjun, I know you also with Navitas have a lot of experience reading resumes and helping graduates and international students with what elements would you sort of say, are there elements which you might say, okay, well, I don't need to focus on this. I need more of this stuff. You know, I want to see more of this stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, to be honest, I think Yusuf touched on most of it. I believe any resume, what you need to do is you need to review it based on the job you're applying. And that is so important because say, you know, you're applying for a marketing job and your previous job is in hospitality, which is great. But say you were in the front register. That means, you know, you have a lot of customer service, communication, resilience. So you need to showcase these sort of traits on your resume that you have done these. You don't have to say like, oh, I am resilient, but then, you know, put in a statement there or put in your work there, what showcases that resilience. taking customer feedback. That sort of shows that resilience. So it's very important. And Yusuf also touched on this again, but most of the times, even when I do recruit for my staff, what I realize is that you get a lot of resumes when you are the recruiter, right? And to be honest, it's impossible to go through all the resumes. So you automatically and subconsciously, people are lazy. So obviously we go for those resumes that are clean and nice, which is easy to read, which is easy on the eyes. And sometimes, you don't even read those minute details which are there on your resume. So highlights those, and I'm not saying like, you put a highlighter or you highlight it with a color, but highlight those points which are relevant to that job. So for example, again, if you're going for a marketing job, then showcase that. You need to highlight those points which showcases your marketing skills, or which showcases your soft skills, which can be used for marketing. And that is quite important. And another thing which I want to touch on is, I've been hearing this thing about volunteering and importance of volunteering. Yes, it is important, but then I also realized that volunteering it's not for everyone. Okay, it's an elitist notion that everyone should volunteer, and unfortunately not many people can. Some of them have commitments where they have to work 20 hours and provide for themselves. Some of them even provide for their family back home. So volunteering is not for everyone. So find other ways. I remember when I first came to Australia, I did a bit of freelancing. Now that is something which you can do. And again, try to freelance. If you are freelancing, try to freelance in the skills you are good at and what you want to pursue as a career. Now there are scores of websites online where you can freelance, where you can get freelance jobs from all across the country. It's extremely competitive, but then resilience helps. So as long as we are all international students, we are quite resilient. So I think freelance could be a good way to earn some money, as well as enhance your skills which you want to pursue further. Other thing, what I want to touch on is your personal branding. And this is something which I have seen international students don't do enough. And especially when what we focus at Navitas is that personal branding and how you brand yourself and sell yourself to the potential employer. And that is basically it. You are selling yourself to an employer, or you're selling your skill set to the employer. So you need to brand. Think of yourself as a product. Think of yourself as Dairy Milk, and then how you sell Dairy Milk. Same way you sell yourself, and that is quite important. That personal branding is something which international students tend to not do enough, mainly because they come from a different culture.
And what is an example of personal branding? Like,
okay, it's quite simple. It's quite simple, right? I mean, it's as simple as what you put on your resume. Sometimes people undersell themselves, and this is something which most of the international students do. They have excellent skill sets. They do amazing job. I mean, it's the simple fact that they have come a minimum of 1,000 kilometers away from their home and studying in a new country, new culture, new language. That sort of shows their resilience. How many international students actually sell that to their employer? How many international students tell that, hey, I know more than one language? People often say, oh, your English is not good, but then why don't you try to sell the other languages? Hey, my English might not be as fluent as a native, but I know 4 other languages. And this is the fact, right? Most of the international students know multiple languages, at least 3 or 2. So sell that. So these sort of very small things add so much value to your resume and to your profile. But most of the times, international students fail to realize their capabilities and their skill sets and their advantage, and they try to go in a different direction.
And I think that's also a cultural thing. The culture tells them not to promote those things.
Exactly.
Um,
And yeah, you need to sell yourself. Basically, that's it. If you
Yeah.
don't sell yourself, no one else will.
And I think that was an interesting point you raised, and it just made me think of another one. It's about, I guess, what Yusuf touched on as well, relevance. The best resume I saw was when I wrote a job description, the resume sort of matched it in order that I wrote it on. Almost like I said, they wanted this, I wanted this, they had this. I wanted this. It was almost in that same order. If you think that way, I think you'll definitely get there. Now, the other point you mentioned was, I remember I did a job, sort of a graduate job. I did it for 4 years. I finished off, I got applied for 3 jobs. I got 3 offers, but it didn't look as good as the job I did. So I actually rejected them all and I started contracting. I did a short contract for 3 weeks. I did another one for 6 weeks and then another one. But at the end of that, my resume looked so much better because I had all these little experiences, a few months work versus 4 years work, right? It looked like I had a lot of experience. Now you might read in details and see, okay, well, this is only a short time, but that got me a job later that paid me 2.5 times the salary that I left that first job with. So that's a huge change simply because I did a bits and pieces there. Now, we mentioned volunteer work, but you also talk about freelancing. If you did a bunch of freelance jobs, imagine how much you can put on your resume, especially if you're looking as a graduate or international student where you might have no experience. People now see that you're proactive. Now that you see you got exposure to a few different industries, you've developed all these skills to try to get a job, get different short-term jobs, and you've actually had to test all those skills in probably more pressure situations as well. So I think that's a very, very important point. Matthew, I also pass it to you. Is there anything that you see, Matthew, that they do and they shouldn't do maybe, or any other thing you would like to add to what we just discussed?
I think Yusuf mentioned all the things about the resumes, and I think that the longest resume I personally have seen is 7 pages. So you can imagine the frustration, and I think on the 3rd page I was like, yeah, no, this is too much. And I worked when I was working in the college, I worked a lot with students, and they would come up to me, I haven't found a job over a year or things like that, and I'm sort of like, first things first, send me your resume, I'll have a look into it and I'll help you out. And majority of the times were all the mistakes that Yusuf just pointed out, and it was just whether too long, whether it wasn't looking best or anything. But what I've learned with myself, and this is my personal experience, and what I'm actually looking nowadays as well, and I spoke to you yesterday about it, Dick, was the fact that quite often I think in Australia is the fact that no one actually cares about your education. It's about the experience that you have, whether it is volunteering or whether it is an internship, or the fact that you had done those little contracting jobs as well, because if you have the experience, but you might not have the education, the person might still look in priority for you, because majority of the time, like I said, if you have that experience, it means that you have pretty much the soft skills that are coming with the job as well. Whether as a graduate who has just a degree, you'll be like, okay, it's just a bit 50-50, like, am I gonna go ahead with it or not? Yeah.
I think I just want to let the audience know that if they want to ask any questions, put it in the chat. This is quite a specific thing about resumes, and I know a lot of people have always experienced a lot of different issues with resume. We might not necessarily answer everything because it could be quite specific. I know one person has asked about yourself, Yusuf, about being in Deloitte. How do you get there? And I think obviously that's going to be a trendy question for a certain type of person. We might not answer that, but we'll see if it ties into some of the other answers. Did I interrupt someone there? So I think someone wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say about that question is, say to the students, the fact, don't aim for the big 4 or that. It's just, there are so many companies that are successful and where you can actually reach higher than in those positions that you are in those big 4s, because maybe you find a job that you are really good at. You might become you might get into a management position, and later you go to the big 4 because you have that experience to show them, and you'll get paid for it. Because don't like, how do I put it? We discussed it earlier. Start from the beginning. and it's important to set yourself goals, but be prepared to fail. But obviously, don't go with that mindset. I'm gonna fail either, you know.
Yeah, I would add to that actually, and it's not specifically about Deloitte, it's more about employment overall. And it's exactly what you just said, Manfred, is that a lot of students, you know, be it an engineer, you want to work for a mining company; in finance, I want to work for the big four banks; in business, I want to work for big four. And you're literally limiting yourself to 2% of the market. So large companies in Australia comprise 2% of all businesses in Australia. 2%. So you oversaw the small businesses, the medium businesses, really, and a lot of big names and big companies who are just not large companies, like more than 300 employees, for example, right? So a lot of international students, and this is especially true for international students, they want to work for international companies. And as you said, this is great, and you can definitely get the brand, but you can have a much better chance of landing an internship, a job, a full-time, you know, project, whatever the arrangement may be, in a medium company as opposed to a large company. Now, back to the question about Deloitte, nothing specific. I was just honestly lucky, just like all the thousands of graduates I applied and didn't get the first round, and second round I got, and it's pure luck. There's nothing special I did, right? But in terms of your chances as a graduate, if you want to increase your chances in the job market, please don't just aim for the big four. Yes, do the applications and everything, that's okay. But can I just say the job market is a lot more than the big four and the big international companies. And you'll see like many, many extremely successful leaders who've never worked at any big name you ever know, right? So just change your perspective and look for those opportunities.
And it's, I guess, on the topic of applying for the big four or applying in general, I'm not an accountant, so I didn't apply for a big four accounting firm, but I applied for a big four, which was a taxable accounting firm, which is a management consultancy. And I remember I got through, and I really was surprised how, because really it wasn't the first round, I missed the deadlines for everything, right? And then they interviewed me later, almost like 6 months later, and I wondered, how did I get in? And I remember it, and on reflection, it's really, your degree, and I think we should run this in a little bit more, and maybe some people mentioned it in previous sessions. And having worked in 2 recruitment agencies myself, not necessarily as a recruiter, but I've worked in 2 recruitment agencies. I've obviously trained people. After, maybe once you graduate, they might see your degree, but nobody really cares what mark you got. Nobody cares that you studied engineering and now you're doing marketing, right? And you could say, oh, I want to do marketing. I should study in marketing. I don't know. So don't think too hard about the degree. It's sort of important. A lot of jobs still ask for a degree. Having said that, a lot of the big four, it's not a requirement anymore, right, for a degree. Or if it's a requirement, you don't need an accounting or business degree. You can study something, engineering or arts, and still become an accountant. So they know that it's not relevant. And we know in Australia particularly, and in cultures in overseas is not such the case, but we know it's what those other companies were looking for, what the big four were looking for. Once you got the degree, we want to see everything else. We want to see you can lead, you can do projects, you can play well with others. Sports, I found, if I look at the comparison of international students and local students, one huge difference I see is very few of those international students either participate or put in their resume that they were involved in any sports, particularly team sports, right? You learn a lot from team sports. You learn to abuse people. You learn to become competitive. You learn to work together. You learn a lot of stuff, and also starting things. One of the most impressive person I interviewed was a person who was doing a business analysis job. She was the best candidate. I just couldn't afford her in the end. She was asking too much money. But what she did on the side was she wanted to give her mother a job to do, or something to keep herself busy with. So she started a business. This is before the Airbnb day. She started like basically like a dorm sort of business. Got a house, rented it out, had a bunch of rooms, got her mother managing students coming in and out. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, because what sort of skills do you need to do something like that? Apart from the proactivity, and I know I spoke to one of you yesterday, we talked this idea of, is the person proactive? And I think that's one specific thing which you find can be lacking in international students and resumes, because the culture tells them to do what you're told a little bit. You do what you're told to study, you study what you're told to study, you do the job and you be good and you might get promoted. It's not, and the alternative is almost like, I think I should do this, and debate it with your boss and fight for it. It's a little bit of that proactivity. I see something and I want to do that. So I think that's what I personally see is, if you want to be specific, that's good. I have one question. Any tips on personal branding for LinkedIn, other platforms recruiting for? I think this is a good question. It might not be for everybody to answer, but if anyone has a thought about that, any tips of branding on LinkedIn and other platforms?
I think my first thing I would say is grammar, straight away. Whether you write things in capital, your messages, make it look presentable, because that will show your professionalism straight away.
Mm-hmm. There's this thing called Grammarly, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, use Grammarly.
Exactly.
It's free.
Yeah.
I remember reading a friend's website. This person was starting a business to be a coach, and I looked at the website, and I can say this because it's sort of my background. But you ever heard of this word called Chinglish? Chinglish is like Chinese English. It doesn't sound like English, but it's someone from China trying to pretend it's English, and it looked a lot like that. So it's almost like I can't recommend anybody to you because you look like you can't speak English.
Yeah.
So Grammarly is a great plugin for your search engine or your even Microsoft Word. You can get grammar sorted on that.
Yeah, you can even put it on your phone, and it helps a lot.
Yes.
Personal experience.
Yes.
I would also like to add one more thing on LinkedIn. It's about keywords. Keywords is quite important, especially when recruiters when recruiters look for potential employees. What they do is they use the search engine, they use Boolean search over there, and they put in keywords. So keywords are important. So say you want to be a brand manager or you want to be in branding, then use the word brand on your profile. It's very important. And that is how recruiters find you. Otherwise, they won't be able to find you. So then there is no point for LinkedIn. So keywords are quite important. And there are scores of resources online on how to do keywords properly on LinkedIn. Please utilize them.
And I'll add to that as a really, really good points. And I think both are like definitely the grammar one. You'd be surprised how many errors you find in LinkedIn profiles. And to that point, professional photo, like please don't, if you don't have a good photo, don't upload a photo. There's no reason for you to crop someone from a party or have a really distracting background or wearing casual and have that on your LinkedIn, right? And it's honestly not hard. Now, most iPhones or whatever device you use have portrait mode, good lighting, plain background. That's it. You're done with it, right? So you don't really have to go professional photography. That's one thing. The other thing, never ask for a job from someone. If you just connect with someone, your first message should be, hey, I'm looking for a job, right? Always ask, and I think you already touched on that, ask for insights or advice. People love to help, but they don't like to feel that, you're taking advantage of them. So, and same for me. If someone connects with me on LinkedIn, hey, I'm looking for a job, straight out, I'm just like, no, I don't know you. I don't know what jobs you are. I haven't even met you. I don't know who you are, right? But if you say, hey, I'm a graduate, I'm in this area, do you have any tips? More than happy even to jump on a call with them, right? So that's the difference in the approach. Mm-hmm. But I really have to, I guess, go back a little bit to what you said, Diklam, about graduates and degree, because I feel like that resonates a lot with me. I studied 2.5 years of engineering, transferred to accounting, worked in auditing, then management consulting, then human resources. And all through it's been transferable skills. No one really cared about what degree I did. Even my marks in the first interview for graduate, the interview said, look, Yusuf, I have your transcript and your degree, but don't worry, I'm not gonna look at that, so tell me about yourself. And that was the opening line. And I was surprised. I'm like, all throughout uni, you were being told, study hard. And that's important, absolutely. Having high marks definitely sets you out. But it's not really as important as you think. All the other transferable skills are more important. So I don't mean to sort of take too much, but this is a very important point that a lot of graduates think that's a, make it or break it. If you don't have good marks, you're not going to get a job. And that's completely, false.
Yes. And I think there's a culture of status there. The degree gives me some letters after the name. And I know in certain countries, and I know this because of people I know, it's almost like the more letters, the better. there's a certain country where the cards even fold out because you can't fit all the letters on. I believe it's the Philippines. So Arjun, you wanted to say something there?
Yes, yeah. Just to add on to what Yusuf said, I think it also depends on what role you're going for. Now, say you're going to academia, obviously your marks are important. Okay, but then if you are going into industry, corporate world, then I don't think marks are as important as the other extra things you do. So yeah, I won't say your grades are not important at all. Grades are important, but it depends. What you want to do with your life. You're no longer in high school where you have to get 90, get a 70, and with that 20, instead of studying for that extra 20%, if you take up a volunteer role or if you do a freelance job, that adds more value to your profile than getting 90 and not doing anything else. That is if you want to get into corporate or if you want to get into a day job. If you want to go to academia, I think it's different, and you definitely need marks and publications and projects, which is another tangent, which I don't want to go into because I don't know much about it.
Yes. Now I see there was a Q&A box. Someone's asked, it's similar question. What about the degree you go to? Does that matter? I think also the reality, especially in Australia, most people don't stay on a flat career path. They change, and people expect that. The person who's interviewing has probably changed their career twice at least. And also it talks about what university you go to. So I'll answer this quickly. I don't think we'll go too much in this because we'll move on. But university, what I found was it did matter and it didn't matter. A little bit like the degree, it didn't matter so much. But what I found was if the person got into a better university by themselves, let's say not necessarily paid their way in, they often were a little bit smarter, because it's almost like if you could get into this university and you could get into this university, then you would pick the better one. So that's the only difference I found. And for the jobs I was hiring for, it was a noticeable difference. It was business analysis. So the person sort of had to be smart and work things out. But apart from that, I found sometimes the best people are people who work their way up with no degrees, because they did it with other skills. They did it with experience. Those are the people who actually were better on the job than people.
Yeah, I think I have a joke for this, is that I've been, when I started studying, in my head, I had always these get degrees, but on my final year now, I'm just, and this is a disclaimer, don't do this, please get degrees, mate. In the end, you'll get there, because you just need to put your energy into what you think is important for you. And I think that's most important there as well. And I think when Christina asked the question, what degree or university, don't think about the university or the degree. Just go study that you're not going to be miserable for the next 3 or 2 or 3 years. Please
I think
don't
that's
do
the
that.
point, because you can be really miserable, right?
Exactly.
What I want to do is I want to move on to this third question. I'm just very wary of the time. I believe we have about 15 minutes perhaps remaining. So I know ourselves and perhaps some of the previous panels have also addressed on this soft skill and other experience and volunteer work and other involvements in a potentially successful candidate. Now, some of our audience would be saying, bugger, it's too late. I need to apply for a job and need to get one, hopefully in the next few months, and I don't have that. Okay, yes, we can tell them to start doing something, and they'll probably start doing that. But what do you suggest they do now? Now, we could talk about networking and other things, but is there something specific, do you think, we can advise these guys on how they can get that job?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead. Many things you can do right now. So literally, and all students know this, Google search, but be specific in your Google term. So for example, I just graduated in data analytics. I would write data analytics companies, Melbourne, data analytics roles, Sydney, right? And it's going to come up with 2 results, big companies I know, but it's going to come up with 2, 3 results that I've never heard of, right? Or list of management consulting companies, Australia, for example, right? That's going to give me names of companies I never knew existed. And that's back to my point about 98% of the market. It's harder to find them, but it's not impossible. So you can definitely find these. LinkedIn is another area where you can sort of filter for industry, filter and approach people. As I said, always don't look for a job, always ask for insights. But I would say Google search, and to that, there is a website called clutch.co. As a disclaimer, I don't know who these guys, I have no affiliation with them, but clutch.co, they list all of the companies, mainly in the IT, consulting, digital marketing, and they probably have up to 2,000 Australian companies that are medium-sized. And the good thing about these companies is that you can go to their website and there is a form and you can contact them directly. So there's not that long recruitment process that you typically find in the Big Four or the multinational companies. So you can just be creative in where you find these jobs. Just like retail hospitality, you want to, if you were looking for a job, you might just go in person. So this is similar. You're going to the website directly to the company, as opposed to you're going through Seek or LinkedIn. So that would be, my tip for that.
Yes. Any other of our panel?
Yeah.
Jump in.
I'll jump in next, I guess. Well, I do have more than one recommendation. So first one is obviously do your research. It's very, very important. The second one is, better late than never. So pull up your socks and start doing things. And to be honest, I don't think you need to start from the beginning. You can even start now. And one of the best resource I have ever seen is LinkedIn, and LinkedIn Learning in particular. And this is something Navitas provide to all our students, mainly for them to upskill themselves. And LinkedIn Learning is quite beautiful. I do it myself. In fact, I still upskill myself quite regularly using LinkedIn Learning. And you can see that on my LinkedIn. If you go there, you see those certificates there. And use that wisely, because let's face it, if a potential employer comes to your profile, they want to see that you are developing yourself further than your studies, right? And you graduate, you end there, and you never touch a book again in your life. It won't help you. So upskill yourself, continuously upskill yourself, continuously try to improve yourself, and look for those things which align with what you want to do in your life, your career goals. So say you want to be CEO. Okay, so what are the things you want, or what are the skills a CEO should have? Okay, how can I progress there? What are the steps I should take? And what are the skill sets I need along the way? And what can I gain on the job? And what should I gain beforehand to reach there? So these sort of things you need to figure out. And it doesn't come in a day. It could take years, but then that's okay. That's life. Nothing comes easy, right? So my suggestion would be, first, go improve your LinkedIn profile significantly. Use LinkedIn Learning. I know LinkedIn Learning is premium, so you might have to pay, but then that is your upskilling cost, and it is worth it. That's what I mean to say. And I remember, I remember one of my friend asking me this question. And I want to share this. So he wanted to do management jobs, and this guy was applying for marketing jobs. Now these two are quite different, right? Management is not marketing. So where is your career, or rather, what is your career goal? And that is what you look for. Now, if you want to be an operations manager, then look for operations manager job, or look for an operations coordinator job, and then progress to a managerial role. But it is so important for you to upskill yourself, even if it is late, it's okay. Because 1 year down the lane, you're going to regret that you didn't do it now. So better late than never.
No, fantastic. Manfred, would you like to add anything else to that?
I think Arjun used the key word called self-development, and it's just no matter which position you will be ending up, self-development. Look, I do self-development. I don't do it on LinkedIn Learning, but look, there's so many free webinars, things going on lately. Yes, some of them might not be good, but still, it's worth a shot to at least start looking into it. If it's not good, then just go away. But there's it's just, even your university has probably these kind of seminars, or I'm not sure how much it is face to face here in Darwin. It's a bit easier, luckily, but it's just put yourself out. There are workshops, all that sort of stuff. I know a lot of business owners here in Darwin. We get together monthly at least once, and we discuss, oh, what have you been doing today, or things like that. I got invited to a Tony Robbins seminar with the boys to go, but look, I said, sorry, it is about 2 a.m. I'm going to be sleeping at that time, as much as I would love to. But still, it's the idea that you do have to, even as a leader, you have to have self-development at all times. You never stop learning.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point, and we want to finish up soon. But I guess myself, it's a little bit, I want to take a different angle on this. There's a lot of emotion involved in applying for jobs and not getting anywhere. You know, the panel members will probably agree with me. And there's many taxis, for example, I've been in where the guy has 3 degrees, you know, and probably Uber drivers now. And I talk to them and ask them, oh, you know, what did you do? What did you study? And they'll give me a lot of reasons, and I don't seem that negative about it. It's just they've resigned themselves. And if I look back when I graduated, I could have been in the same situation. But one thing that I found which was different is if I hung around people who are also not succeeding, you know, this is the idea of misery likes company. So if you failed, you can come up with lots of reasons why you failed, that the employer was stupid, you know, or the system sucks, right? And these other people who are failing like you would agree with you. And then you get into this sort of miserable community discussing about how things are all bad over there. And what happens is, if you really press on how many applications they sent, they might have sent a dozen, and they gave up and they decided to do something easier, something their friend might have been doing, driving a taxi or working in some sort of shop. What was lucky for me was I hung around, I was an honors student, even though probably was too lazy to be, but they gave us a room and everyone was getting jobs and I wasn't even applying yet. I was just, and I was starting to apply and I was failing. So instead of getting people who agreed with me about how hopeless it is, these guys are getting offers and I can't talk like that to this group. So I'm trying to work out now, how do I get this? How did you answer this question in the interview? How did you apply for this? So you hang around a group which is actually trying to get you somewhere, rather than hanging around a group which agrees with how bad it is, how the whole system sucks. So really, that's what I found is the main emotional difference. The people who applied and improved and got there versus the people who applied, got sad and gave up. And I think that's one thing that you could look for. Look for a group which sort of helps support, and it doesn't have to be a job group. It could be something else. The other tip, which is more, I guess, a bit more specific tactical tip, and Yusuf mentioned this, is going directly to company websites. When they did the statistics of this, going to a company website versus going to an online job post, so going to Seek or Indeed, on average, online, they get more than 200 applications for a job, probably even more now with COVID. When you go to the company website, it was about 33 before someone got the job. And what you can also do is apply for a job, send them the stuff, whether they have a job advertised or not. Just follow up every month. Because that actually what they found that is successful, because you're usually directly targeting the HR department rather than a specific manager, and they'll keep you on file. And then you might just send them an email update and says, oh, here's my revise, just want to check if there's anything else out there. At some point, someone will leave or lose their job or usually leave or get promoted. And it's expensive to go to recruiter and time consuming. But if this guy really wants to work for us and has contacted us every month to see if there's a job available, there's a good chance within so many months, a vacancy will open up and you will get first chance to interview before they even put on go to the market, onto the internet, or go further. And the decision maker is not usually HR. The HR will promote you because you seem enthusiastic. Decision maker is the employer, and the employer likes you. They won't wait around for more candidates usually, unless there's a bunch they've lined up. They'll take the person because good candidates will often get another offer somewhere. So if you develop yourself, that you get to that point where you've done enough interviews that you interview well, your resume stands up, you get in front of the person, they will usually offer you the job straight away. And at least half the jobs that I've worked in, the job was offered before I even got down to the car to drive away, or got down the elevator. The agent called me up and says, "Oh, how'd you go? Did you like it?" And then they offer you the job. So they really want you. And usually they know the people they want will get snapped up somewhere else. So look in that way. Thank you for our panelists again. If you'd like to add in any website, you can type it in to there, and just make sure you send it in the chat to everybody at panelists and attendees. There's a specific question, just type it in if you like. There's a specific question about how we can cover our student expense if we do part-time job. I won't get into that. It's not necessarily the point of this. I'm also aware that this topic was a lot supposed to be about leadership. We touched on getting a job, but I think also the point is the leadership comes from the stuff that you do. We can't tell leadership from your degree. We might be able to tell some things from the activities that you do. But really, if you have good communication skills and you've shown proactivity, and we've discussed this a lot, proactivity is also initiative. These are the key points that we are looking for. If you've got a degree, we know you're smart enough, right? You're smart enough to probably be a leader. We want to see your communication, some of those soft skills, and also we want to see that initiative and proactivity. And I think that's really, when you're a graduate, they don't know if you're a leader yet, but they want to hire a leader or someone who can become a leader, but at least can do the job first. So that's really what I think they're looking for. If anyone likes to type in their website, feel free to. I'll just simply paste maybe my one in as well.
And,
anyone wants to add?
I just want to add one more thing. Please don't forget your personal branding and don't undersell yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And remember, nothing's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. No one's going to do this for you.
Yeah. And I mean, Declan, you touched on so many points, so I'm not going to add too much to it. I think just embrace the journey. That would be my advice. If you told me 5 years ago when I applied for a lot of employers, I was so, frustrated and everything that would be here, I wouldn't believe you. Because I think embrace your journey is very uniquely yours. You're very different, your resilience, whatever. And just think of the big picture, right? In 2 years, 1 year, this will not even matter. Like this phase, whatever you're going through is not going to matter in the scheme of things. So always put things in perspective. Don't overkill yourself and feel like, and you already touched on sort of your group and law of attraction. Always definitely surround yourself with those people who are actually high achievers and you want to be around them. But yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Terrific. Thank you all. I'm going to hand over. We have one final question. I might just simply touch on how effective do panelists feel like reaching out to employers about tips about a role or career? Any ideas on that? I think LinkedIn is probably the best way. And I think yourself, you mentioned, Yusuf, is you can always ask for tips or have a coffee. Now, I know of COVID, you probably can't have a coffee, but at least buy their coffee. I've had people come to me and not even pay for my coffee. But people want to help. So I would reach out that way, but the message cannot become like a sales message. Have a good picture, by the way, on LinkedIn. I think that's been mentioned as well. So many terrible pictures on LinkedIn. It makes a big difference. Smile in your picture if you can and wear something which is not so casual. At least have your face lit up well rather than half in shadow as well. So I'm going to hand over to Domi now. Domi, are you there? There she is.
Thank you guys for sharing your practical advice and giving some realistical view to outstand the competitive job market. Thank you so much for coming on board to giving some valuable insights to all our international students. Thank you so much once again. So to all participants, it was my pleasure being with you today the whole day. And thank you all for joining this webinar, and thank you for your time and attention being throughout the webinar. And once again, I thank all the sponsors who made it possible for us. And also the very exciting news that I want to inform you all is our team is working hard to bringing together an employability conference late next year, which is promising to fulfill all your relevant informations and some in-depth micro-level discussions on the employability opportunities for international students, especially in Australia. So we are working on bringing resources on board and making it more lively, engaging globally. So to get more informations and also to tap on to early bird registrations, please visit our website, www.studentjobaustralia.com.au. Stay tuned, we'll come up with more information and exciting speakers announcements soon for the conference. Hope to meet you all soon. And once again, thanks everyone, speakers, sponsors, and students for participating in our webinar. Thank you. See you all soon. Bye.